Hi and welcome back. Now we're going to discuss a topic that is relatively quick. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it here, but we'll make sure to put plenty of practice problems in the quizzes. When dealing with lines, we can have two lines that are parallel or perpendicular. Parallel lines run side by side. Think of two lanes on a straight highway. They're parallel. Perpendicular lines cross each other at a 90-degree angle or square angle. Let's define them a little more mathematically. Two lines are said to be parallel if they have the same slope. They must also be in the same plane, in our case the two-dimensional plane of the xy coordinate system, and they must also never intersect. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, have slopes that are the inverse and opposite sign to one another. In addition, they intersect one another at some point at a right angle in the same plane. Let's take a look at a couple of examples here. As you can see, we have two parallel lines here, and we know they're parallel because they're linear equations and they have the same slope. So if you were to plot these two lines for several points, you'd be able to tell pretty quickly that they go on indefinitely, side by side, and they never cross over. Same thing for the two lines here. They both have a negative slope of 1/2, so they're parallel as well. Just like with the lines above, you could plot several points on these two lines and see that they run parallel to one another, side by side, and they never cross. Now let's take a look at perpendicular lines. The two lines here are perpendicular because the first line has a slope of 2, and the line below that, its slope is equal to the inverse opposite of the one above it. So instead of having a positive 2, we have a negative 1/2. Same thing with these lines. The slope for the first line is negative 1/2. If you take the opposite sign of that, it becomes a positive, and if you take the inverse of that, you get a 2. Let's take a look at one more example. The slope of the first line here is 3. If you change the sign of that, it becomes a negative 3, and if you flip it, you get 1/3. Another thing to point out, just in case, is that whenever you have an integer, say 2 or 3 for example, you could actually write that as 3/1 or 2/1, but we usually don't do that because it's extra writing. But when it comes to inverses, it's understood that what you're dealing with, for example in this case, is that the slope here is 2/1. So to take the inverse of that, it becomes 1/2. To take the opposite sign, you get a negative 1/2. Let's go ahead and take a break here. When we come back, we'll get into inequalities.